Hi everyone, it is I, Ren, your friendly neighborhood Slytherin. I wanted to make a manifestation slash personal growth type of video today because, y'all know I was not going to let this eye look go to waste. But seriously though, today I wanted to touch on the subject of how to stop asking for permission from other people to have or obtain your desires. I might look off to the side here from time to time just to reference my notes, so just a heads up if you catch me doing that. So whatever it is that you want, whether that be a house or a new job opportunity, taking on a new hobby even, right? You don't need permission from your friends or your relatives or your colleagues, anyone in your life to go after that thing, unless it's like a literal license or something that you legally need in order to engage in some type of activity for safety reasons. Like, for example, a motorcycle license, you have to have that in order to drive on the road because that involves the safety of you as well as everyone else who is on the road. Aside from a situation like that, I'm here to tell you that you don't need anyone's permission to do anything, okay? You get to just do the thing that your heart desires without announcing or checking in with anyone. And you don't even really need to let anyone know ever. I mean, if you want to share it, if that brings you happiness, that's fine. But if it's something that you're doing purely for yourself, you actually don't even, nobody else has to know about it except for you. Oftentimes, we are programmed from a young age to ask for permission from our parents or our teachers or whatever authority figures in our lives for every single little thing, right? Think of in the third grade when you had to use the bathroom in the middle of class. You know, you had to raise your hand and ask your teacher in order to be excused. Or sometimes it would be more indirect, like maybe you didn't have to verbally ask, but you know intrinsically that you're not allowed to do certain things as a child. For example, again, in elementary school, you know how they have those street patrol officer people who let the kids know whether or not it's okay to cross the street? As an adult, you just have to look at the light signal by yourself, right? But as a child, you have to wait for an okay from the trusted adult figure in this situation, which would be the patrol officer. You also probably had plenty of rules put in place by your parents, such as going to bed by a certain time or the rule that you were never allowed to turn on the stove for any reason, right? Because that is something that's super dangerous, obviously. If you ever did use or find yourself near the stove at all, it would have to be under direct supervision of one of your parents. So this conditioning, this requirement to get permission is obviously very useful when we're talking about young children who are very vulnerable, whose lives and safety are at risk every day. It makes sense to teach kids to ask for permission before they do something that can potentially harm themselves or others, because ultimately that serves the greater purpose of protecting them and the greater community. The problem is, though, that a lot of us subconsciously carry this programming with us well into our adulthood, far past the point where it's actually useful to have in our lives. In fact, it becomes detrimental to our growth and well-being if we continue to do this as an adult. And this is especially true for women for, obvious reasons that females typically tend to face more danger and more immediate physical danger than males in society, just because on the whole, we are the weaker gender. So what happens as a result is that parents and authority figures subconsciously tend to drill this message into young girls' brains even harder than they do to young boys. So as a result, we are trained into asking for permission to do things and to hold back and not act on our impulses or intuition until somebody, some authority figure, gives us the okay. Except here's the catch, there is no authority figure once you're an adult, right? Like past the age of 18 in the US, give or take a few more in other countries. Think about it. You can drive a car, you can drink alcohol, you can work legally. You are the adult in this situation now. So you are the one who gets to give yourself permission to do whatever. But in adulthood, what happens is that this childhood habit that a lot of us have developed of seeking a cosign or seeking permission from someone translates into us asking our relatives or our friends, our colleagues, managers, whoever, right? Whenever we find ourselves wanting to do something that feels a little bit out of our comfort zone. So in actuality, we're holding back for some reason, and that's why we revert to that childlike self who always has to ask for approval before they can do something. The thing is, when you find yourself asking a friend or acquaintance or whoever for permission to do something, the very act of you asking is actually proof that deep down you are not actually ready or willing to do the thing. Through asking, you are basically hoping that the other person manages to convince you out of it somehow. Does that make sense? And then after that, if you don't end up doing the thing based on the other person's advice, maybe you realize later that you regret the decision or you wish that you would have just gone for it. And at that point, you can conveniently blame it on the other person and never have to take your own personal responsibility for not going after what you wanted. So and so talked me out of it, so it's their fault. It's not mine for not taking the chance, right? So think about something that's a really easy decision for you, relatively speaking. For example, if I wanted to order, let's say, a caramel frappuccino from Starbucks, which I'm gonna get next week when it releases, okay? I don't care how many calories it is. Or let's say you wanted to go watch the Elvis movie in theaters 4 times by yourself, which I also did, okay? Unabashedly, okay? Unabashedly. These are examples of like low stakes type of decisions that most people would not even think twice of, checking in with someone else on if it's okay to do the XYZ. And then the reason for that is because you've already decided 100% in your heart that you're going to do it and you have no resistance to it, right? Like you have no guilt conditioning or unworthiness thing going on that is causing you hesitation. So therefore, there is no need for you to get anyone's outside approval. Think about like for something easy like ordering the Starbucks drink, even if you did ask a friend if you should do it and let's say that they said, no, don't do it. Those things are really, really unhealthy and they're filled with unsaturated fats, this, that, and the third. It wouldn't even matter if they advised against it because you would just be like, screw you, right? I'm going to get my drink. Like, that's what I want. I don't care if it's unhealthy, and that's the end of the story. But when it comes to seemingly bigger ticket decisions in our lives, and I say seemingly because there is actually no such thing as a big or a small decision within the overall scale of the universe. The only difference between a small and a big decision is your personal confidence level in your ability to actually do or pull off the thing. It's not that the decision itself is harder to make, right? Like for somebody else, the thing that you're struggling to decide on is just the same thing as ordering a cup of Starbucks for them. So it's not that the decision itself is bigger or smaller, it's just your personal relation to it, right? You just feel like you have more at stake with this particular thing for whatever reason. So think about all the things that you want to do, but you're nervous about or you don't feel 100% confident in. You'll notice that when it comes to these particular desires, you may default to that, third grade childlike behavior that we just talked about. I have a friend that was asking me the other day whether or not she should start taking pole dancing lessons. I don't know, that's up to you, right? I'm not your mom. I'm not your mama. I'm not the moral police here to tell you whether or not that's appropriate, right? I mean, I did it. I love it. I don't see anything wrong with it, right? But what about you? What about her? Is she carrying some sort of shame or guilt conditioning of, oh, I shouldn't do something that's so sexy or taboo, or like, oh, I'm too old to do that, right? That is her personal conditioning. That is not the absolute truth. Of course, you get to do pole dance as an adult. You get to decide that for yourself anytime. You don't even have to you can pole dance at any age, any gender, right? There's plenty of guys that are doing it now, or non-binary. Like, it doesn't matter, if those people can do it, then why can't you? Another example I can think of is, let's say maybe you want to start your own business, right? But you're scared, so you start asking your husband or your colleagues or whoever about, oh, how much risk do you think it's going to be? Will I go into debt? All of this fear-mongering stuff that comes up. And then before you know it, you let them talk you out of it, which is actually what you wanted in the first place. And which, by the way, is actually what the other person is subconsciously picking up on from your energy. Because when you approach people and you ask them questions or you ask for their opinion to weigh in on something with wobbly energy, they can sense your hesitation immediately just from the vibes that you're giving off. 70% of communication is nonverbal, right? So subconsciously, they actually feel like they're doing you a favor by convincing you to not go through with your plan. They might even feel like they're protecting you in that way. So, this is not to say like never ask anyone for any outside help or information. That's not what I'm saying at all. But there's a difference between a question designed to seek information, like seek a real solution for something. So, with the business example, if you wanted to start a business in Japan and you've never done something like that before, you might seek counsel from like a business mentor or join an entrepreneurship group or whatever, right? There's a difference between that type of forward driving, like I genuinely need to find this piece of information type of question, and a question that is actually disguised as an ask for permission, which is really just a coded way of asking someone to talk you out of doing the thing that you really want to do because you were conditioned to feel like you were bad or out of line for wanting that thing ever since you were a child. Does this make sense? So next time, try to catch yourself whenever you find yourself asking the second type of question. Realize that in that moment, you're actually subconsciously seeking for like some non-existent authority figure's approval on something that you 100% have the ability to decide for yourself, okay? And then you can begin to identify areas of your life or like what kind of desires scare or trigger you to revert you back to that third grade permission-seeking consciousness. And then once you identify it, you can consciously start choosing to give yourself permission. Like literally go inside your head if this exercise can help anyone. Imagine the 8-year-old version of yourself and then tell her or him that, yes, it's okay, you can do this now. And actually, did you know that we're not 8 years old anymore? We're actually 21 or 25 or 35. We don't need to ask for people's permission to do the things that we desire. We don't need to ask people anymore. We don't need to ask adults for the permission to do the things that we want to do now, because we are now adults who are capable of making our own decisions, and then also by extension capable of dealing with the consequences of those decisions, whether they be whatever they are, good or bad. So giving yourself the permission, this is the first step to take in manifesting anything that you desire. Actually, no, it's the second step. The first, very, very first step, which actually maybe we can call it even step 0, is that you need to get crystal clear and specific on what exactly it is that you actually want. And then after that, if you find yourself resisting it or too scared to do it without somebody co-signing it for you, then you proceed to the giving yourself permission stage. All right, so that pretty much wraps up everything that I wanted to talk about today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if there are any other specific subjects that you would like me to talk about or explore in future videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!